Hey everyone. Okay, so we're down to the final two honorable mentions to this list. Admittedly, with this one, I made a few flubs here and there, if one wants to be nitpicky, but this thing is damned hard to play and get through in one take. And I've spent enough time with it over the past 2 weeks, and I have to get moving on into the top 10 proper and get this project finished in this lifetime. That, of course, was Steve Vai and what's known as Eugene's Trick Bag from the 1986 film Crossroads. Now, the first 8 honorable mentions that I've done were not really in any particular order. These last two, however, are. I would put this one in the top 20 were it my list. And my final honorable mention coming up in maybe 2 months would be in the top 10. That said, why is this solo not on this list at all? Boggles my mind. Because it's not part of a song, because it's from a movie. I'm at a loss, totally. One of the most famous and iconic guitar solos of all time by one of the greatest guitar players of our generation, Steve Vai, who surprisingly is only on this list one time. That master of the guitar solo, Kurt Cobain, is on here twice, for a little bit of reference. This is one of those holy grail type guitar solos. Every rock or metal guitarist, once they reach a certain level of technical ability, has to give it a shot, you know, and many fail. I failed for a long time. Back when I was in my 20s, I gave it a good go, and I thought I was pretty good, but I couldn't play it. It was beyond my abilities. I could fumble my way through the Paganini Caprice section, but that was about it. Oddly enough, at nearly 56 years old now, from my efforts and practice working on this list over the past 2+ years, I'm a better and faster guitar player than I was when I was 25. Now I can play it. Almost. But she sure isn't easy. Those arpeggios at the beginning are a nightmare to play. So bloody awkward to finger and so fast. Like nothing that I've ever played before. I just had to keep hammering at them over and over and over until I burned them into my muscle memory and didn't even have to think about it anymore. I had read that Steve Vai alternate picked the whole thing, the arpeggio section, though I suppose that some of it can be sweep picked to make it a bit easier, if one knows how to sweep pick, that is. However, I figured that I'd go with the alternate picking route. My alternate picking is pretty good, I think, and my sweeping is fairly average in comparison. Finally got it down to the point that I was somewhat comfortable with it and didn't really have to think about what I was doing too much. And then it was time to move on to the fast Paganini-inspired Caprice section. Like I previously said, this part I had touched upon when I was younger and had included it as part of my guitar solo when I was playing in the bars way back when. So this part came relatively easy, though it's not easy in the least. Very quick with, again, some really awkward left-hand fingering. This is where I made one of my previously mentioned flubs in this performance, but oh well. And then the jumpy bits, This was bloody hard to get down and be precise. The lick itself isn't so difficult. It's the lightning fast jumps up and down the neck that are so damn difficult to nail every time. This took lots and lots of practice and a few takes to get almost right when I was recording. Then a bunch of ascending E notes, not really that tough, that little section there, and then the fast scale run to finish. I love scale runs, and they're one of my strengths, I think. So this section, despite being the part that ultimately dooms Jack Butler in the movie, wasn't really particularly tough to nail. But overall, as far as difficulty goes, for a 1 minute and 20-second guitar solo, I give this one an 11 out of 10. Extremely hard stuff to play, especially the arpeggios at the beginning. It took me about 2 weeks of steady practice to pin this one down, but worth every second. Really happy to have this one under my belt. Lots and lots of interesting stories behind the music and guitar playing in this film. Now, as I previously mentioned, the musical credits on the movie Crossroads pretty much came down to blues player Ry Cooder, guitarist Arlen Roth, whose involvement was vastly understated and sometimes excluded, much to his dismay, and Steve Vai, of course. Steve Vai was a fairly late inclusion, and his late inclusion was actually pretty much considered a bad idea by practically everyone involved in the making of the film, except for the producers of the movie. They wanted to capitalize on the mid-'80s hard rock guitar shred boom that was going on at the time, and wanted a long-haired hot player from that genre to play Jack Butler, the devil's chosen guitar player in the film. Nearly everyone involved thought that it was jeopardizing the integrity of the movie that they were trying to make. They thought that they were making a movie about the blues. That was kind of at the core of the screenplay. The final guitar battle between good and evil, between Lightning Boy and Jack Butler, was supposed to be, according to the screenplay, a slide blues showdown between Lightning Boy and Jack Butler, and had actually already been put down and recorded by guitarist Ry Cooder and Arlen Roth. Cooder himself was initially chosen to play the on-screen part of Jack Butler, and then came Steve Vai. Screenwriter John Fusco was baffled by the decision. Ry Cooder and Arlen Roth felt that Vai's inclusion would permanently date the movie to the mid-'80s and lose the timeless quality of the film that they had been working so hard to achieve. In the end, the producers won out, as they often do, because, well, they're the ones signing the paychecks. The producers had batted around a number of ideas before finally settling on Steve Vai for the role of Jack Butler. Jimmy Page actually had lobbied hard for the part, but was not chosen. They had also considered Frank Zappa. That would have been cool. And Stevie Ray Vaughan. Even cooler, I think, but finally decided to go in the direction of a hard rock metal showdown and chose Steve Vai. In the end, everyone got along famously, or so they say, and all had nothing but good things to say about each other once the film was completed. I personally think that it was the right decision. If you're familiar with the film, I hope you are, it's a wonderful guitar film, you'd know that Lightning Boy was a classically trained guitar prodigy, but that his heart was in the blues, and he fancied himself a blues man. And as he's constantly reminded by his traveling companion, the legendary Mississippi blues man, a real blues man, Willie Brown, he's good at the blues guitar, but he's not as good as he thinks he is. He doesn't play with the feel. He hasn't lived and experienced the blues, being a pampered New York City mama's boy. Now, with this being the preface, a blues showdown wouldn't work, in my opinion. A key element of the finale is that he finally realizes in the end that his blues playing just isn't going to get it done in beating the devil. He has to fall back on his real, true talent, classical guitar. And that's where the film works. And that's where Steve Vai and his wonderful neoclassical hard rock solo comes in. And that makes sense within the constructs of the storyline. It then becomes like a morality play at this point. Stick with what you're good at, and appreciate the talent that you have at what you're good at. His classical training, it's all in the setup of the movie and throughout. And he's a brilliant classical guitarist. So to just ignore all that later on and have him face the devil's guitarist in a strictly blues battle and win just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Steve Vai was the right choice. And I think they all realized that in the end, whether his inclusion as a rocker dated the movie to the mid-'80s or not. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about that one. I hope you like my take on that one. It was a hell of a lot of work. Coming up next, we have number 9 and Randy Rhoads with Crazy Train and Ozzy Osbourne. And hope you're well in your little guitar corner of the world. And we'll see you next time.